She gave away all her savings, sold the house, and moved in with her family, dreaming of a peaceful old age with loved ones. But instead of care, she received betrayal. After spending money, they tried to evict her from the house and even declared her incapable. The desperate fight for justice brought her to court, where shocking details of the family conspiracy were revealed. Will she be able to get her money and dignity back, or will she remain a homeless victim of the most kindred people? Chapter 1. Background of the case. Emily Johnson has always been a strong woman. She grew up in a modest family in Chicago, where her parents worked in a factory and taught her daughter one simple truth: family is the most important thing. She followed this rule all her life. When her husband died of a heart attack, leaving her alone with her 7-year-old son, she did not break down. She worked day and night as a nurse in the hospital to give Michael everything he needed: the best education, a decent life, support in any endeavor. Her son grew up as an intelligent but ambitious boy. He always wanted more than his mother could give him. In his youth, Michael dreamed of becoming a financial analyst, and when he received his diploma, he immediately plunged into the world of big money. He got into risky investments, hoping to get rich quick, but instead ended up in huge debts. After another financial failure, Michael came to his mother with a request for help. "Mom, I need money. I'm in serious trouble," he said, sitting across from her in the small kitchen of her old house. "How much?" she asked, hoping that the amount would be high. "About 350,000, Michael muttered without looking up. Emily almost dropped her coffee cup. "What?" "Michael, I don't have that kind of money." She looked at him in disbelief. "But you have a house. You can sell it." His voice became quieter, as if he himself did not believe his own words. She tried to deny it, but Michael continued to convince her that this was not just help, but an opportunity for them to become closer. "Think about it, Mom. You will sell the house, we will buy a bigger apartment, we will live together. You always said that you dreamed of grandchildren. Sarah and I also want a child, but we need a bigger apartment. This will be our new home, where you can be a grandmother." These words touched her heart. She would really like to see her grandson grow up, take care of him, tell bedtime stories. After much hesitation, she agreed. She sold the house in which she had lived most of her life and transferred $350,000 to her son. But she had no idea that this sacrifice would become her biggest mistake. Chapter 2. The start of the trial. The Cook County Superior Court courtroom was packed with people. Journalists, lawyers, relatives, random listeners, everyone was waiting for the trial to begin. The case, which at first glance seemed like an ordinary family dispute, gained public publicity. The story of a mother who sold her house for her son and then found herself fighting for her own money caused a stir. Emily Johnson sat on the plaintiff's bench. She looked tired, but she kept her back straight and determination in her eyes. Next to her was her lawyer, Mark Rivera, a middle-aged man with a sharp mind and a brilliant reputation. He was known for the fact that he did not tolerate injustice and did not lose cases in which he saw a violation of moral principles. Michael Johnson sat on the defendant's bench. He looked annoyed, nervously tapping his fingers on the table. His wife, Sarah, sat beside him with her arms crossed over her chest. She did not hide her displeasure. Their lawyer, Paul Henderson, had a cold and measured expression on his face. He specialized in property cases and well understood that this would be an uphill battle. Judge Robert Kelly took his seat. He was known for his unbiased approach and analytical thinking. His gray hair and piercing gaze made everyone in the room feel under close control. "The court opens Johnson v. Johnson," said the judge, flipping through the papers. "The plaintiff claims that she gave the defendant $350,000 not as a gift, but for the purpose of jointly purchasing housing where she should live. The defendant denies this, saying that the money was given voluntarily. We will start with the plaintiff. Mr. Rivera, you have the floor." Emily's lawyer stood up. He approached the judge, stopped for a moment, and began. "Your Honor, this case is not just about money. This is a story about trust, manipulation, and betrayal. My client, Mrs. Johnson, sold her only home because she believed her son was going to take care of her. She had given away all her savings, and now it turned out that not only was she denied the right to own a home, but they were also trying to declare her incompetent. Your Honor, I will prove that this woman was deceived by the person closest to her. A tense silence reigned in the hall. The judge nodded and turned his gaze to Michael. Mr. Johnson, your attorney will be able to present your case, but before we begin the questioning, there is one thing I want to hear from you. Do you admit that you received $350,000 from your mother? Michael swallowed and looked at the lawyer. He barely perceptibly nodded. Yes, Your Honor, that is true, but the judge raised his hand, stopping him. No buts, Mr. Johnson. We will find out during the hearing. Michael pursed his lips and Sarah crossed her arms in annoyance. Everyone understood. The process is just beginning, and there will be many surprises ahead. Chapter 3, Testimony of the Plaintiff. Emily Johnson stood up when she was called to testify. She walked slowly to the witness stand, feeling her son's gaze on her back. When she sat down, the bailiff asked her to raise her hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, only the truth, and nothing but the truth? He asked in a formal tone. I swear, she answered calmly. Judge Kelly looked at her over his glasses. Mrs. Johnson, tell the court about the circumstances of the transfer of money to the defendant. Emily took a deep breath. She remembered the same conversation in the kitchen, the promises that had seemed so sincere at the time. She looked at the judge and began to speak. I loved my son more than anything in the world. Everything I did in life was for him. When he came to me with a request for help, I did not even doubt that I would do everything possible to save him. He told how difficult it was for him, how he was mired in debt, how he wanted to start a new life. He convinced me that this is not just financial help, it is a chance for us to be closer. That I would finally have grandchildren and he would have stability. She paused for a moment, letting the words settle in the silence of the hall. He promised that I would live with them, that we would have a spacious home where we would all be happy. I believed him. I sold my house, in which I lived for more than 40 years, and gave my son $350,000. Did you have any written agreements regarding this? Asked her attorney, Mark Rivera. No, she shook her head. It was my son. Was it necessary to draw something up on paper? I trusted him. What happened after the money was transferred? Asked the judge. Emily folded her hands in her lap, trying to hide the trembling of her fingers. Michael bought a neighboring apartment and renovated it, combining it with the one they already had. At first, everything looked good, but when I moved, it became clear that I was not expected there. I was allocated the smallest room, which used to be the kitchen. Sarah made it clear that I was a burden to them. I was forbidden to interfere in their affairs, to come into the living room, to communicate with guests. I didn't even have the right to cook in the kitchen. How did you react? Asked the lawyer. I tried to talk to Michael, but he avoided the conversation or said I was exaggerating. And then it got even worse. I overheard Sarah calling the old people's homes, asking what the conditions were like for people like me. And then I received a summons to the court. My own son wanted to declare me incompetent to get rid of me forever. Surprised whispers rang out in the hall. The judge gave a stern tap. Calm down, he said. Go on, Mrs. Johnson. Emily gathered herself and looked directly into the eyes of her son, who was sitting with a stone face. I'm here because I'm not going to let him just throw me out of his life. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. This is not charity, not a gift. It was my money, and I want the court to recognize that. The judge nodded and turned his gaze to Michael's lawyer. Do you have any questions for the plaintiff? Paul Henderson smiled and stood up. He was ready to attack. Chapter 4, Defense of the Defendant. Paul Henderson, the defendant's attorney, stood up slowly, showing confidence. He came closer to the lectern, glanced at the judge, and, enduring a theatrical pause, turned to Emily. Mrs. Johnson, do you think your son is a fraud? Emily clenched her hands in her lap nervously. I believe that he betrayed my trust. But you gave him the money yourself? Voluntarily. The lawyer insisted, raising an eyebrow. I trusted him because he is my son, she answered, looking straight into his eyes. It was not a donation, not a gift. It was a deal. I had to live there with him. The lawyer nodded, as if acknowledging her answer, but immediately went on the offensive. But there is no written contract, right? No, but there were agreements. Oral, she answered firmly. Henderson addressed the judge. Your Honor, I would like to remind you that according to the law, oral agreements in such cases do not have legal force. The defendant had no obligations to the plaintiff. The money was given voluntarily, and there is no evidence that it was a loan or joint investment. The judge nodded, indicating that he had heard the argument but made no conclusions. Meanwhile, Henderson turned to Michael Johnson, who was sitting on the defendant's bench. Mr. Johnson, tell the court what has happened since your mother moved in with you. Michael sighed deeply and stood up. Your Honor, my mother moved to us of her own free will. My wife and I did everything we could to make her feel comfortable. We allocated her a separate room, arranged a space for her, but, he paused, imitating hesitation, she constantly interfered in our lives. Sarah, who was sitting next to her, crossed her arms over her chest and rolled her eyes in disdain. What do you mean? Asked the lawyer. She tried to control us. She criticized my wife, said that we do not eat like that there is no family warmth in our house. She constantly quarreled with Sarah over little things. And when we invited friends, she complained that she was not allowed to leave the room, although it was simply our attempt to give her more personal space. Emily shook her head, pursing her lips. You filed a lawsuit to declare the mother incompetent. The judge intervened. Why? Michael pretended to sigh. It was a difficult situation. She became nervous, conflicted. We thought she was going through an emotional breakdown, possibly due to the stress of selling the house. We just wanted to find the best conditions for her, not make her miserable. There was a muffled hum in the courtroom. Lawyer Mark Rivera could not stand it and stood up. Your Honor, allow me to ask a few clarifying questions. The judge nodded, signaling for counter-questioning, and Emily clenched her fists, realizing that it was now her turn to defend her truth. Chapter 5. The verdict of the court. There was tense silence in the courtroom. Judge Robert Kelly adjusted his glasses as he peered at the documents in front of him. The last words spoken by the parties still hung in the air, mixed with tension and anticipation. The court has considered the evidence, listened to the testimony of both sides, and is now ready to announce its decision, he said, tapping the table with his pen. Emily clenched her fists, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. Michael sat with a tense expression on his face. His wife, Sarah, tapped her fingernail on the table, nervously looking away. The judge continued. The key point of this case is whether the money was given as a gift or had another purpose. The defendant claims that he received these funds as a gift and that he had no obligations regarding them. However, the plaintiff provided the court with documents confirming the sale of her home, as well as evidence that she did not intend to simply transfer this money to her son, but invested it in a shared home. Michael shifted nervously in his chair. In addition, the judge continued, the court takes into account the fact that the defendant initiated the process of declaring the mother incapable. This indicates an attempt to eliminate her from her own life and deprive her of the opportunity to demand a refund. The correspondence provided by the plaintiff also demonstrates that the intentions of the defendant and his wife were far from caring and well-intentioned. Sarah pursed her lips, trying not to look at her husband. The judge paused briefly and then delivered the verdict. The court decides the plaintiff's claim is to be satisfied. The defendant, Michael Johnson, is ordered to repay $350,000 to his mother, Emily Johnson, as unjust enrichment. There was a muffled noise in the hall. Michael inhaled sharply, his face pale. In addition, the court rejects the defendant's claim to declare the mother incapable. The court believes that the plaintiff is absolutely reprehensible and has every right to manage her finances, the judge added. Emily closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel relief for the first time in a long time. She won. The judge struck with the gavel. The case is closed. Michael jumped to his feet. But I don't have this money. How am I supposed to get them back? He exclaimed angrily. The judge looked at him coldly. This is no longer a matter for the court, Mr. Johnson. The law is the law. Sarah hissed something in the man's ear and quickly left the hall, leaving him sitting there with a blank look. Emily stood up slowly, and despite her tiredness, she felt confident. She looked at her son one last time, realizing that this moment had changed everything. She was no longer a victim. She got back not only her money, but also her dignity. And what do you think? Was the judge's verdict fair? Write your thoughts in the comments below the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next crazier thing.